we're living through an era where transportation, where mobility, whether it's the mobility of goods or the mobility of people, is really undergoing a tremendous change. I mean, we see that change all over the place in the way that people use smart devices as a kind of mediating force in the choices that they make, the way that they shop, the way they perform tasks that were once perfectly self-evident tasks that had brick and mortar institutions associated with them, certain patterns of movement, certain kinds of vehicle types. All of that is really up for grabs in a way that's, I think, transforming the nature of public life. Autonomy means a lot of different things. It's not quite so simple as just simply saying, let's introduce autonomous cars in the streets of Boston, which is a terrifying thought, but maybe on highways where it's a much more controlled environment. But how much autonomy? And what about intelligent vehicles, smart vehicles, vehicles that have autonomous capabilities in spaces like sidewalks, pedestrian zones, civic spaces? Those are the kinds of questions that interest us. The development of vehicles is only part of a larger complex where smart traffic systems, the sort of smart city movement has just as much to say as the availability of new kinds of vehicles that support or assist our movement. And this is very much the focus of the work that we are carrying out at Piaggio Fast Forward, trying to bring intelligent approaches to the mobility of people and things, but at the right scale, not necessarily at the scale of automobiles or cars. Usually when we think about mobility on a larger scale than the human. Like when we talk about automobiles, or we talk about trucks, or we talk about trains, or we talk about ships, those are all vehicles that exceed the scale of our bodies. And in fact, they are designed precisely to operate in their own sorts of roadways or passageways or channels that exceed the scale of the human. Granular mobility, instead, is a kind of mobility that's focused on that fine-grained level, which is the scale of humans themselves. And that's the scale on which goods and people move around on sidewalks. The roadway is the sidewalk. Those sidewalk environments are extremely complex environments. Delivering a pizza down the street turns out to be a really hard task because there's so many different moving parts to a sidewalk. And a sidewalk does not have a clear set of fiducials or markers the way that a warehouse floor does. It's an environment that requires a lot of judgment and decision-making. And robots are extraordinarily smart in many ways. They have extraordinary sensing capabilities, but they're also rather dumb when it comes to understanding the complexity of a human behavior. Like, I step off of the curb, this is the Google car problem. I step off of the curb, and what I'm saying is, as a pedestrian, I might cross the street, but I'm not crossing the street. So I'm having a kind of war of wills between the guy who's driving the car down the street towards me and my role as a pedestrian who owns the striped crossing, right? That's not, those kinds of behaviors, those rituals of interaction are really complex. So our approach instead has been trying a slightly different one, placing the human at the center. Humans are already autonomous. When we go for a walk, we're autonomous. We're an autonomous vehicle, if you like. How do we aid that autonomy? How do we expand that by creating vehicles that expand the compass of our movements, enable us to do things that are difficult for us to do within our autonomy? And in order to do that, our focus has been on leveraging the power of human navigational expertise. We are expert navigators of sidewalk environments. This is our world. And in the process of doing so, trying to extend mobility by offering a multifunctional and a multimodal vehicular platforms. Autonomy for humans, for us, for me, means very much that focus. It's a kind of human-centric vision of what cities might be, not an automobile-centric one. And I think that's what this revolution in transportation is all about.